From Oscar Steakhouse, inside the Plaza Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, you're on the corner of Main Street. Welcome to the only podcast produced by and recorded in the Las Vegas Hotel Casino. From gaming to dining to entertainment to sports to Vegas history, this is the place to be for the inside scoop, because this is the place to be downtown. Now, here's Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel.
Today we're going to do something a little different. I heard this on a different podcast and gave me an idea that I shared with Gary. The idea here is essentially we have come up, as of today or this recording, very close to 4 years of doing a podcast. So
happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Congratulations to us for making it 4 years. What part are you laughing at? The clap? What was that?
The very definition of a smattering.
Yeah.
Can you believe that the first episode, the first true episode, because there was a couple pilot episodes that we tested with. The first episode dropped February 18th, 2020, before the entire world changed.
The entire world changed, correct. And that really was the emphasis of, I think, why this thing got legs, was because people were sitting at home bored in the pandemic, looking for something to listen to.
There were times that you were sitting home bored.
I was like, can we do a podcast now, please? Can we? And to her great credit, Lisa, who is not with us anymore on this podcast, but she was the original pioneer with me in terms of conceiving this, thinking about it, and we have a video of her and I initially trying to do a podcast, and it was terrible. So thank you, Rich, for being with us for 4 years and being a big part of this team, because without you, it wouldn't have been possible.
Thank you for letting me come along for the ride. It's been great.
And as always, our reason for doing this is really simple. One, I actually enjoy it and enjoy meeting our guests and having fun with everyone that we do. But the main thing is every single day, or maybe every couple of days, I meet someone that listens to this podcast that's in downtown or at the Plaza because of this. And so that's our way of either monetizing it or seeing value out of it is simply by meeting real people that listen to this, derive value from it. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. I heard a different, bigger podcast where people were talking about Vegas, and this came up. So our podcast came up. So, I mean, for me, it's really about, that is the concept. That is why we do it. It's all about giving something to our fans, the listeners, and the reason for them to come to the Plaza. And that's why we've been able to last 4 years doing this.
One of the great things about this is that you guys come at it from a position of knowledge. You are in Vegas. You know Vegas. You run a casino, as opposed to all these other tourist podcasts that are made by people who've been here maybe once or twice and never left the Strip, and that's their entire impression of Vegas. They think we're all dealers and we all live on Las Vegas Boulevard.
Right. And to be honest, I appreciate your compliment, but we don't feel like we're coming at this as experts. We're just talking as we normally do in a meeting, whether it's brainstorm ideas or talking about what's happening in the city, and this is just being recorded. It's a pretty natural thing for us, so I appreciate your compliment. But anyway.
And I think to have, for me, I've only been in town for about 10 years. So to be able to listen to some of these people who have been in town for 30, 40, 50 years, there's so much knowledge and there's so much history that I've learned from just doing this podcast and doing the research for the podcast. So it's meant the world to me.
I appreciate that too. I think we've all had fun. We've met some great characters. And of course, we've been able to capture the Oscars dinner series, which in and of themselves are snippets of history that will be used forever, I would think.
I certainly hope so.
I agree. So what we did is we did a poll. We reached out to some of our more avid fans. If you're listening and you weren't reached out to, I apologize. But we try to get a good sense of, if you were to choose your best bits of our podcast over 4 years, what would they be? And we started getting way too many different snippets. Right. So then we created 3 different categories. So what we have here is we're going to have 3 episodes. Each episode is a genre. One is based on gaming, one is based on more history, and one is based on more nightlife, F&B, entertainment. And we chose our 7 or 8, based on the feedback we got, 7 or 8 best clips from those genres, and we put them into one episode where we'll be talking about them. And tied to this is going to be a very cool giveaway. I did something on my Twitter the other day with some poker sets using classic Plaza, Vegas Club, and Western casino chips. And we'll be giving those away. I don't know exactly how social media team's working on that, but stay tuned to the social media to do that. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through and tell some stories here.
And I think it's also great that some of these episodes are from early on. So I apologize if we don't sound as smooth as we maybe do now.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I didn't think of that.
And for people who joined onto the podcast later on and didn't go back to our catalog, they can get a little bit of the best of, right? So
that's a good point.
Let's go ahead and start at the beginning. with you, Jonathan, sharing your story of how you came to the Plaza and eventually started running the Plaza.
And before you switch that, for anyone listening who, I often get this question where someone asks me, well, how did you end up here? I was like, well, you obviously don't listen to my podcast.
Right.
Because this is where I told that first story. And again, to your point, this was Rusty, right? This was episode 1.
Yes, this is the first.
The gaming license is a more detailed process. You can't just sort of go online and apply for it. There's gaming lawyers who we had, and they helped me through the process. You know, Gary, the honest truth is being young and inexperienced totally works in your favor, because when you go through the licensing process, they want to investigate your background. That's the number one thing. They're investigating your background. And
Did anything come up with your background?
No, I'm very clean. Okay. So I was going through the process, and there was one thing when I was in England. I had a sports betting account, which I used when I was in the US, but it was in the infancy stages of all the new laws and America banning online gambling, but I was still using my English account. So when they investigated my background, they could see in my bank accounts that I'd used a UK betting account from the US while I was in the US, but for the UK, which was illegal, unbeknownst to me at the time. So I didn't know what I was doing, because I still had a UK bank account. I was still, in my mind, placing bets in the UK, but I was physically located in the US, which was illegal. And the Gaming Control Board wanted to make an example to say this is not going to be accepted going forward. So it was a little scary during the investigation that they grilled me in public and almost wanted to learn from me how I was doing it, because they wanted to make sure that in the future people wouldn't be doing that. But the idea of the process, Gary, was easy, because other than the sports betting issue, I had no history. I had no trust. I had no background. I had no multiple offshore accounts. I had no work, other jobs. I had no other ties to anybody. I was a 29-year-old, and the only previous person for them to speak to was my school teachers. What are they going to ask?
Did they reach out to your school teachers?
No, but there was a joke from Poyu that who are they going to go ask about your school? There's no one else to talk to. I mean, in other investigations, they want to go to your homes, they want to go to your all over the place. For me,
anybody arm's reach. Yeah,
there was nothing to see. There was no one. There was nowhere to go. So the process was quite quick for me, and it's a lot of paperwork. But you can't apply online, because the only way to get a casino license is for a dedicated property. So I am the licensee for the Plaza. I couldn't just go online and be like, hey, I want to get a casino license.
Yeah,
it has to be for a specific location. The license stays with the location, not the individual. So if I ever leave the Plaza, I don't get to keep that license. It stays with the Plaza.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you have it for the Las Vegas Club as well, or was
did.
that sold
Yeah,
already?
I did. I had it for the Las Vegas Club, and it went when we sold it. It goes with the property.
When you got the license, you applied for both, or was it under you, like just Jonathan Jossel, and then you have two properties? Or, I mean, it's under your company, right? But
yeah, it's under the company.
It was split.
It's two separate licenses.
Cool.
Again, it's for each property, but they were approved at the same time.
You were the youngest, and you had two licenses. That's kind of cool.
Well, it was two locations. It's
Sure.
two locations. Yes. Yeah. It was cool, but you know, the Las Vegas Club was coming towards the end of its life at that point, so it was probably not as cool as you would think, unfortunately, because I love the Las Vegas Club, but what happened to it needed to happen to it.
You clearly have a business-centric mind. You stayed here during the recession. I think I've heard a story before of you in middle school or high school, or when you were younger, already starting your first business of selling, what was it, pagers or cell phone cases?
Well, no, I sold cell phones at school, but when I went to university, two friends of mine, one of them was this genius. It was 2002, and he was really good on eBay. And in 2002, eBay was brand new to the world. And I didn't know what eBay was. He said to me, hey, there's this thing called eBay. We should look into selling stuff on there. So I said, what is it? And he showed me it's like this auction site. So my father was in the electronics business, and we went to his warehouse to find things that we could try to sell. And
On eBay.
On eBay, yeah. and there was this stash of Dyson vacuum cleaners. You guys know what Dyson is? They're not as big in America as they are in England, but they're still big.
They're
here.
pretty big now.
They're
Still
big,
big,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's like the DC-04 Animal and the DC-05 Upright and all these different models. And I said to one of the guys, and I said, what are these things? He goes, oh, they're refurbished Dysons that had issues. We fixed them. We don't know what to do with them because we don't sell things that aren't brand new. The world wasn't as flexible as it is now.
Sure.
So my friend goes home. He researches Dysons on eBay, and he realizes that there's a huge market for secondhand Dysons.
Wow.
So I said to them, let us take 10 and see what we can do. We sold them in the first week. I think we sold them in the first 2 days.
The whole lot that you bought?
Well, we just did 10 to start.
Okay.
So then they were like, what did you do with them? We were like, don't worry, we sold them.
We know a guy.
So they were like, well, we have another 250 of these. And we were like, so we listed 3 every day for the next 2 months. And what was happening is because eBay was new, people were bidding, and they were actually paying more for the refurbished model than the brand new one because they didn't want to lose the auction.
Yeah.
It was a psychological thing. We sold one for more than retail, and I was like, this is amazing. And then we were charging them for delivery. I think, and so what happened is we sold all 250 Dysons. We were the largest sellers of Dyson vacuum cleaners on, I think, ever, except for Dyson. And basically, I don't think we would have ever gone into jobs if Dyson hadn't caught on to what we were doing. And today there's a Dyson store on eBay. Dyson owns their own store. But if Dyson hadn't done that, we would still be selling Dysons on eBay, and I probably wouldn't be here. It was an amazing business, but Dyson did catch on to it, and now today they have a Dyson store that sells lots of vacuums.
For the first 6-7 years that we worked together, I did not know that Dyson story. So
Yeah.
you know, pretty much almost becoming a reseller of Dyson vacuums is just mind-blowing.
I know I say it, but and I said it there, but honestly, I don't think I would have come out here if Dyson hadn't caught on to what we were doing. It was pretty cool. It was fun. And obviously, I'm glad it didn't work out because coming to Vegas was the best thing I ever did. Okay, so our second person was Marilyn Spiegel, and I wasn't the only person coming to Las Vegas to dive into the crazy world of Vegas. We had a great conversation with her. She was the former executive at Wynn and Encore, and she shared her journey of how she got to Las Vegas. You're traveling the world. You're going around the world, and Steve says, do you want to come and work at the Wynn?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, he said, I'd like you to be the president of the Wynn.
Wow.
And
Encore was open?
yes, Encore opened December of 2008.
Okay.
And so one of the things I love to do, one of my favorite meetings of the week was the revenue management meeting. And so revenue management, for those who may not know, is how you are thinking about filling your hotel. Mm-hmm. And you have hopefully good intelligence about how others are filling their hotel, because there are different sites that scrape websites every day to find out what's the Plaza selling for, if you're Circa or vice versa.
We have the same weekly meeting.
Yes, and it's so much fun, right? Because it's really like, combat duty. Mm-hmm. And so we saw early on in May of 2010, I'm at my revenue management meeting.
You've just become the president.
No, I wasn't at Wynn. I was still at Paris Bally's and Planet Hollywood.
Got it.
And so I would see in this meeting that Memorial Day weekend in March, they were 100% sold out in March. Well, let me just say, that's a problem. That's a problem. They were so scared that they sold all their inventory early and would not have the ability to yield up. Mm-hmm. And yield up is the spice of hotel revenue, right?
Right.
And so
it's the art.
Yeah,
it's the real art.
And so I knew they were running scared. But think about it. They put $2 billion into this brand new property at Encore, and they opened in December of 2008. And by that time, it wasn't really clear we were in a terrible recession. We just felt like, we're going to get through this. And so they went through all of 2009, and they weren't making so much money. Mm-hmm. And in 2010, there were just all sorts of internal struggles, I'm sure. I wasn't there. But by December of 2010, I joined the Wynn, and people were shell-shocked. I mean, at the Wynn and every place.
Right.
But my point to them in revenue management meetings was, you're the prettiest girl on the block. I mean, are you kidding me? You want to sell for $69?
Right.
You're the prettiest girl on the block. And if you sell for $69, what about all the other guys? What are they going to sell for?
Right.
They're going to sell for $16. You cannot do that. And by 2011, so the Wynn, these are all public numbers. I think the Wynn ended 2010 at like 79 million in EBITDA. And then in 2011, we ended at 416 million in EBITDA. And it was because you have to have courage.
Right.
And people with money people with anybody can't stay in the foxhole that long. You got to come up for air sooner or later.
Yeah.
And you'd come up for air and you'd say, okay, this is the new normal. I think I can adjust. And people in the high end of the market wanted to come and try Wynn. And so we became much more successful, really, on the backs of the hotel, and likewise in convention business.
Right.
You know, I would say.
And we have to thank you because the trickle-down effect, especially back then, we were much less in control of our price. We just fluctuated with the market. I think downtown's got its own market now, but 10 years ago, we were like, please, can you raise your rates on the strip?
Exactly. I mean,
Please.
It's really terrible.
We were at $16, like you said.
So we did that, and it was great. I mean, conventions eventually came back. I mean, and so that was 2010.
So you mentioned Steve. What was he like as a leader, mentor? I mean, he just to give you a story, he once told me something, and it really stuck with me. And to this day, if I'm talking to anyone about the industry, I use it, and I always think about him because he told me cause and effect, and the idea that everyone thinks about the casino, but the casino is just the effect. The cause is everything that goes into it, whether it's the room, the hotel rooms, the convention, the entertainment, the marketing, the music, the service, the drinks. That's the cause. You'll get the gambler at the end, but you got to take care of them. And number one was always the relationships. It was always about the people. And he told me that once over dinner. It always stuck with me, and now I use that when I try to explain it to people, the cause and effect.
Yeah,
what was it like working directly?
Well, I think we can all agree that Steve was a genius, and he created a lot of wonderful things. And whatever people may think of him today, he was an amazing operator. Mm-hmm. And so, Steve, I think I had worked for him for about 60 days, and he calls and he says, let's have lunch. Okay. And he said, I'd like to hear your plan of how you're going to increase EBITDA by $100 million. And I said, great, well, I have one. And he said, lay it out. And so Steve...
Did you know he was going to do that to you, or you were already working on a plan regardless?
Well, look, you only have 90 days. If you're in a new job, and I'm sure you know this, you have 90 days to come in, try your ideas, and make sure you've got a plan, because they hired you for having a plan and exercising the plan. And so I didn't know it, but I did have a plan. But it was having the experience at Harrah's and having so many different markets and understanding marketing and understanding who is below the Wynn was just so helpful, because the Wynn had so much to offer. The best product, the best service, the number of employees who have started at the Wynn and who are still there today is probably higher than any other casino because people don't want to leave. And so the culture is rich with five-star service. And so, when we think about Encore and Wynn, two casinos. We're now got all seven, Lisa, and two casinos, but they both had separate management teams. Now that to me was just, I couldn't believe. I mean, you could walk between the one spine. Right. And so we consolidated management teams and, made sure that therefore when there was a consolidation, there was a singular focus. Encore didn't run differently than Wynn. So if you stayed at one side of the house, you didn't get treated differently than the other side of the house, which I thought was very helpful. We took a look at costs. I mean, you can't work for Harrah's and gone through the Apollo days without looking at costs. And so I can remember we were in a design meeting and a designer wanted to have a slot base that was going to cost $800 per base. And I thought, slot bases cost at that time $215 a base. It just cost $215. And so I said to Steve, and I would be like, we had a very good banter back and forth approach. I pulled him aside and I said, look, it's your decision, obviously, but all the other casinos down the other end of the strip, they pay $215 for a slot base. So if you think having it 4 times as expensive is going to cause you to get 4 times as much revenue, you should do that. But you should know what the regular price is.
Yeah.
And so we bought $215 slot bases and then put a little ginger on them.
Nice.
And was he hands-on? Did he spend a lot of time? Well, firstly, you gave him your plan. I assume he liked it.
Yeah. Oh, I stayed.
Right.
I mean, I made it past my 90 days. And so, yeah, I mean, Steve was, he would call, and typically it'd be a Friday afternoon, and I'd go into the office, and we would talk about the business, and we talk about slot revenue. I mean, I'm really ecstatic about what the Wynn does in slot revenue today, because Harrah's, we used to have a slogan that slots are us at Harrah's, and at the Wynn, tables led the day. And of course, that's because of the Chinese gambler that was so helpful in propelling those table games revenues to be so high. And so slot machines were not allowed to be tall. It would hurt the sight lines. And that, so therefore, slot customers kind of felt like second-class citizens, which, let's face it, they are the most profitable customers of the casino. Slot machines.
Slots are us.
Slots are us. Okay.
Gary, just listening to Marilyn talk, it's almost like an MBA in hospitality and casino management. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back. For me, it was a wonderful insight, learning from one of the best operators in the history of our town. And it's a free MBA and tutorial in how to run in the hotel and casino business. So I would go back and listen to that episode.
And occasionally we have some of our Plaza team members onto the podcast, and I think that makes it really special. And one of the first that we had was Weldon Russell, the director of Bingo and Keno operations, or as we love to call him,
he's the Golden Goose. He's the Golden Goose. Weldon is the Golden Goose. I love that guy. He's a legend. He created Keno in Australia. He really is an icon of this town, and the history that guy has in terms of his knowledge of bingo and Keno is second to none. We have advantage players in slots, video poker, reels, video poker, table games. What does an advantage player in bingo look like? What can they do? Not in our game, because our game's perfect, but what does an advantage player look like in bingo?
Well, I don't know what they look like, but I can tell you what they do.
Yeah, go on.
They come in and buy the room. They will buy, it's like at stations right now, there's unlimited cards that you can purchase for a machine.
Right.
And they've got 2 players that I know of. Their teams actually around Vegas that are running around station casinos. You and I go in, we have no chance to win if we're just playing $50 or $100.
Right.
Because these guys are spending $500, $800 a session.
And the prize is greater than the buy-in. They've figured out that they can buy the room, essentially.
They can get their money back with 3 bingos.
And the only way to combat that is to limit the number of packs you can buy.
Exactly, which is what we do here. When I first got here, there was no limit here.
Oh, I know. I told the story earlier of the lady who came to me and said, please don't change our bingo game. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, well, I bought my daughter a swimming pool last year with my winnings from bingo here.
And she wasn't lying.
No, I know. I remember her.
When we went back and checked, because I can check, she'd won over $80,000.
But that was amazing. She was an advantage player, and she's probably running around somewhere else doing this.
She is. She's down the street.
That guy is a legend, and I cannot stress how important bingo is to our business. We do Super Bingo every single month, except for July and December because of the rodeo, and July 4th, where the ballrooms are being used. But generally speaking, bingo is a big part of our business. It's the time that we are able to outperform the market most. And I'm very proud of what we've been able to build there in terms of the consistency of the game. Weldon's built a great team up there. And people think bingo's a dying game, but it's not. It
continues to keep growing year over year since we've recorded this. I mean, bingo was nowhere near where it is now.
Well, that was 4 years ago, to be fair to Weldon and us, but hopefully we've grown over 4 years. But the idea is people think it's a game that's going to die with older aged people, excuse the horrible pun, and it's only getting better. It's skewing younger, and more people are getting attracted to the game. So we're proud of bingo, and we plan to continue to build on it. So you heard us talking about advantage play in bingo, and that term gets a lot of use in this industry, not always for the good. We had on a veteran gambler, consultant, author, and publisher, Anthony Curtis, who shared some stories about how to be an advantage player and stay on the good side of casino management.
How many casinos have you Have you ran away from?
Oh gosh, over the years, many times, 20, 30 times,
Wow.
But I've never been read the Trespass Act, and that's another thing. When you see
That's
things
impressive.
happening, that's the Trespass Act. There's 2 things they can do. There's 3 things they can do to stop you when they think you're a threat to them as a player. The first is take countermeasures on the game. So they'll shuffle up on you, or they will give you rules, like saying you can flat bet only. Jonathan just brought up in the beginning that you've got to, move your bets around. You got to go from small to big in order to make money. So they tell you cannot fluctuate your bets. So they can take countermeasures on the game.
That's just to interrupt. That's what we do here mostly.
Well,
We'll
which
just
is the right way to do it.
Yeah,
That's-
we're not going to kick you out, but we'll say you just can't go
Yeah.
down once you go up.
And that's fair enough. And anybody who takes an attitude with you for that is just an amateur or a guy who's just got an attitude problem. Because if he got picked off, it's his fault. And if he's told, instead of being kicked out or read the Trespass Act, which I'll get to in a moment, if he's told simply you can flat bet here and you're allowed to stay and have a beer, then then he's been caught, and he should acknowledge that and either leave or sit there and flat bet. But he would leave.
Exactly. They always
But,
leave.
that's the first thing they can stop you on the game. Second is they can just tell you to leave. And the third thing is they can tell you to leave with prejudice, which is to read you the Trespass Act, saying that you cannot come back on the property again or you will be trespassing and subject to being arrested. So I've never been trespassed. I've been backed off a lot. I've been told to stop playing and whatever. I've never been trespassed. And part of that is because part of the job is to see heat coming, to see that there's a problem and get out of there before it happens. So I always did. Maybe they wanted to trespass me, but I was long gone. So I never did get trespassed or back rooms.
But I wanna go back to what I mentioned earlier. Was this is all blackjack? I think one would be really interesting is if you could just define, in your opinion, what is an advantage player, and what kind of advantage players? What else were they doing besides blackjack? Because today it's way more sophisticated.
Yes.
And we deal with it on a regular basis.
Yes. And, well, don't get me wrong. We didn't only do blackjack. We've been talking about blackjack, but we did anything that we thought we can get an edge at. And that's what advantage play is. Advantage play is just what it sounds like. It's playing games only where you have the advantage and not the casino. All right, casinos are advantage players from go, and everybody knows that because all the games are engineered so the casino has the edge. In most games, that edge cannot be changed. There's nothing you can do aside from cheating to change that edge. But there are certain games where the edge can fluctuate and swing to the player's favor. Blackjack is the most famous of them, and that's why we speak of that. But it also happens in video poker. It happens with progressive machines. It happens with casino promotions. It happens with just about any game that you can think of. There can be circumstances where the edge will switch to a knowledgeable player. So advantage player or an AP, as they're referred to now, for convenience, is any person who plays these games, who finds these games and plays only with an edge or when they have a perceived edge.
And it's intelligent. I mean, it's some sophisticated people. It's impressive the way they figured out some of these loopholes. I mean, I've had to learn the hard way. Not growing up reading books like you did and necessarily understanding all of it. To see when we had a young kid here about 7-8 years ago, did a new Royal membership rewards club, and if the points that you can earn are out of whack with the theoretical loss on the video poker machine, you're going to get beat up. Yeah. I mean, you're going to get guys, and we had guys playing for 24 hours straight. They were holding the machines. They had teams waiting to play the machines. I've seen that down the street at other casinos now, and it's pretty amazing how quickly the word spreads as well.
Yeah, and originally advantage player was coined. The name advantage player was coined by a guy named Steve Forty. Steve Forty is among the top 1 or 2 or 3 recognized players of all time. Like somebody once said to me about Steve Forty, they go, he's like Rambo. He could go into a casino under any conditions. You could put him in a loincloth and put him in a casino, and he's like Rambo. He'll figure a way to beat him. And it's true. Some of these guys are just absolutely brilliant. But Steve coined that phrase, and it was all-encompassing. So it included cheating. You were an advantage player. Cheaters were advantage players because they were playing with an edge.
Well, it's a very fine line, isn't it?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's completely different. Our teams, we never cheated, ever.
So let me ask you a question. If you're manipulating a promotion to be in your favor, is that AP or is that cheating?
If you are doing things like using multiple cards, that's cheating.
Okay.
And if you're using multiple identities to do it more than once and double and triple dip and more than that, then
Okay,
that's
I
cheating.
agree with you.
If you've looked at the rules and said, if I play it this way within the rules and I get 5 times what's intended, then that's just outthinking you. And it's up to you to discover that and shut it down. So that's where I see the difference.
You're exactly right. I
So-
agree with you.
Well, over time, that the definition of advantage play got softened to mean playing legally and not to encompass cheating. But originally, it did encompass cheating as well.
There was a time I called you for, I think, help, to be honest with you. You may not have known it, but I was asking you what was going on because we had a promotion. It was the 500 on us sign-up promotion. This was probably 5 years ago. And we couldn't figure out what was going on because the numbers looked great. But we knew they weren't great on the machine levels. And these guys, what they had figured out was they could show loss on this certain type of machine,
Right.
but then pull out the card.
Card pulling.
Now, to me, that's cheating. But it's very genius, and I couldn't do anything about it. But and the reason I say cheating is because they were bringing in multiple people to do it on repeat.
Yeah.
They weren't just doing it one time, but they would show loss on the initial play because of the card, but then they would pull it out and then use the bonus to then recoup those losses.
Yeah, and card pulling is really close, but I don't consider card pulling cheating. Interestingly, I've never done that either. I've never done card pulling because A, it's a little too close to the edge for me, and B, it can get you in a whole lot of trouble. It can really get you in a lot of trouble, and I never wanted to get in a lot of trouble. I really didn't. I just wanted to win the game fairly and keep my relationships good with the casinos if I could. And this kind of goes to another thing, what Jonathan just says. Okay, he called me for my advice or my take on what was going on. This is the smartest thing that a casino operator can do, is befriend people who are knowledgeable in this area. Now, there's no way that I would ever give up something that I was sworn to secrecy about, or that I would pinpoint, come in and say, yep, he's doing it, because then I would be ostracized from my own group. I would never do that. But I would absolutely, people I'm friends with, like Jonathan and some at other casinos, I used to know Mark Brandenburg really well, went over at Golden Gate, and I knew George Maloof. I know George very well. And when these people call me for advice, of course I try to help them. And I really think that rather than treat advantage players poorly and like criminals, you should befriend them. Because A, they won't play in your joint, and B, they'll help you when they can.
But let me say this. I also think that it was an important part of my career development to learn about advantage players. They often relive the story about the tax day promotion.
Yeah.
And for me, that was really something that was important for me to learn how the industry works. It was important to understand what an advantage player truly looks for. And that took me a while to get there. But if you want to run a casino successfully, understanding advantage players is an important part of it. And when we talk about, well, I don't want to call him advantage player, but when we talk about skilled bettors, nobody is better at finding an edge than one of our favorite guests and more recent guests, Billy Walters. There's one guy you do talk about in the book who many people credit as being the founding father of Las Vegas and a genius, but it sounds like your relationship wasn't so good, and that's Steve Wynn. Is it really just because you beat him at roulette? Is that really the extent of that?
100%, nothing more.
You beat him for like $2.5 million on a roulette table?
I won a little bit more money than that from him, but yeah, it was 100% because I won money from him at the roulette.
And he was your friend prior to that?
Oh, prior to that, we played poker, we played golf together, we did a lot of things together. Yeah, 100%. And the week before, I lost the money to him. I mean, I won the money from him. I lost $1 million to him playing blackjack.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I heard that, and he just didn't like the fact that he lost. Okay, so it was more than. And did you ever reconcile those differences, or to this day you never spoke again after you beat him at roulette?
No.
Did he know it was because the table had bias? Is that what it was at this
Well,
point?
he actually sent the table to the manufacturer to have it checked. The manufacturer told him the table was fine. And then my understanding was he sent it to NASA, had the table cut up to see if there was nothing wrong with the table. But he sent Paul and Son are the people who was a manufacturer. He sent it to them because he thought and they told him this table's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So.
But you and your team found some number bias.
Well, we felt like there was some bias. What we realized back in those days is the average roulette wheel at the time was probably 20 years old. And every roulette wheel had some bias to it, okay? And every one of them did. But the majority of them, there wasn't enough of a bias to be able to overcome the negative percentage, the 2 zeros or the 1 0. But there were some, and what I would initially do is I'd get 3,000 numbers on a wheel, and if it looked like there may be a bias there, then I'd get another 27,000 numbers. And we would run a program to, if in fact, try to confirm there was enough of a bias to overcome the house edge. And I started playing roulette wheels, and I played them, all over Nevada, Atlantic City, a lot of places. And then I got where I couldn't play, and I started using other people to play. And then what happened was eventually everybody ended up buying all new roulette wheels, and they replaced them. But if you were to hold a gun to my head and somebody said, "I'm going to blow your brains out," I couldn't tell you what was wrong with those roulette wheels. I'd bought a roulette wheel, I disassembled it, and it was like any mechanical device. It was like an airplane or a car or anything else. Yep. And if it weren't maintained properly or a part was worn, you could create a bias. And
you think that, so the wheels are just better today, so there's less. It still must happen today. I still see it down with our roulette wheels. We try to follow along to make sure there isn't that. But I'm guessing there's guys getting 27,000 pieces of data on a wheel to make sure that they find an edge. It probably still goes on today to a degree.
Well, I think the wheels are a lot better today in the way they're manufactured. I think it's a lot more difficult because you can move. 3 today could be 32 tomorrow.
Right.
So
thank you for making me feel better about that.
Yeah.
I do lose sleep about the wheels. We're the only single zero roulette table in the city. Frankly.
Well, and it's still one of the strongest games in the entire world is a single zero.
Right.
They've been dealing single zero roulette wheels in Europe for hundreds of years.
That's what I always based on, because I used to gamble in the UK and I lost a lot of money on roulette, and I'm like, well, why do we have to do double zero if we can do single zero and still give people a better game? So we talked to Billy soon after his autobiography came out, and I was fascinated by his story and his stories. Billy shared the tale of how he came to Las Vegas.
I came to Las Vegas a long time ago in 1982. And when I came here, I was broke. I was $200,000 in debt and broke. So whatever financial success I've had, it's been a large part because of Las Vegas itself. The second best thing I ever did in my life was to move to Las Vegas.
The first?
The first was marrying my wife, Susan.
Okay.
Of 47 years. Yeah. Moving to a town that was controlled by the gaming industry, and where back in those days, if you were even a sports bettor, you were looked at, in other parts of the country like you were, a retrograde or a criminal or something. Right. By ignorant people, they just didn't know better. And but when I moved here, you're surrounded by people, that are like yourself. They're in different forms of the gaming business, and you're not judged unfairly. And as far as opportunity is concerned, then and still today, Las Vegas has never been a real cliquish town that people, when you move here, you have as much opportunity as people who've been here for many, many years. And so Las Vegas has been great to me and my family.
So that was our segue, but thank you for bringing it up. Why did you move to Las Vegas in the 70s? Is it 60s or 70s you moved here?
It was in 82 when I moved here. The first time I visited here was in 1968.
Okay.
And ironically, on that visit, I met Kirk Ricori and I met Benny Binion on the first time I came to Las Vegas. But I moved here in 1982. I'd been in the automobile business in Kentucky for 16 years, and as I tell the story in the book, that it was my young adulthood. I had a lot of issues with. I was actually addicted to gambling. I had alcohol issues, and I basically wasn't doing a very good job of controlling things that weren't good for me. I made a lot of money. I just didn't accumulate any money. But something happened in my life that no one should ever be exposed to. My son was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor, and anyway, long story short, I lost my business. I lost everything I had, and ended up getting a divorce and got remarried. But anyway, throughout the 16 years I was in the automobile business, all that money I lost to bookmakers. They came by every Monday to settle up. I decided I was going to become a bookmaker. I knew I was as smart as they were, and I would outwork most of them. So I became a bookmaker in Kentucky along with a handicapper. and I was actually booking and handicapping sports, and I got arrested in Kentucky for being a bookmaker, which I was guilty of. And so I had to make a decision, either stay in Kentucky, go back in the automobile business, quit gambling because I couldn't gamble there anymore, or go someplace where I could gamble, I would be accepted, and so we decided to move to Las Vegas. And so I moved here in 1982 and broke $200,000 in debt, and my first partner was Doyle Brunson.
So you mentioned Cook, Coyne, and Benny Binion, by the way, which are the two other books that I always tell people to read. And Cook's book is also called The Gambler. Yours is Gambler, his is The Gambler.
Yeah.
I always tell people to read that book, and then Benny Binion's Blood Aces, which I think is an amazing book as well. I always tell them. But give us an insight. What was Las Vegas like in the 80s? For people that weren't here, like myself. Give us an indication of what was the town like then?
Well, it was a much smaller town, than it is today, obviously. It was a much safer town, I can assure you that.
Wow.
And much, much safer town. Back in the real early 80s, the organized crime was still here. And but, unless you were sideways of organized crime, you didn't even really know they were here. But from a gambling standpoint, the gambling from a customer standpoint was much, much better back then than it is today. Sure. Benny Binion is an example. The Horseshoe, you could bet $25,000 a hand on single-deck blackjack, and you could bet 7 spots.
Wow.
The craps were no limit, and the odds were no limit for a while. You could bet a lot more money on sports then than you could today. There were probably 25 different hotels with 25 different independent owners. Today, you've got a monopoly in Las Vegas. Primarily, 6-7 places control the entire city.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the only people that monopolies are good for are the people who have them. They're certainly not good for customers. So, from a sports betting standpoint, a gambling standpoint, the city's taken a huge step back from a customer standpoint. They've changed the odds, and even though you couldn't win playing blackjack, guys that weren't counting, they've changed the odds in blackjack. It's more in favor of the house now. They've changed the odds in sports betting. It's more in favor of the house now. And back when I first came here, the town was, the revenue predominantly came from gaming income. Room, food, and beverage was something that was there to entertain the guests with, and normally if you're a gambler, they gave it to you. The business model's completely changed today. The majority of the revenue is non-gaming in Las Vegas. But as far as the gambling part of it is concerned with a customer, if you're a gambler, I don't think Las Vegas is nearly as good today as it was in the 80s. I don't think any part of it's as good. The limits, the games, the way they're structured, or anything else.
I hate to hear that because we weren't here in the 80s, but everyone you talk to that was here says exactly that. Better times, better gambling. And I did hear that you had the lease for the sports books at the MGM and the Mandalay Bay. You could have been in the sports on the other side of the business, right?
Yeah. Prior to being indicted while I was here, I'd made a deal with Terry Lanny and Mike Ensign, and I was going to lease all the sports books at Mandalay Bay at the time, which was 5, and all the MGM Mirage sports books. And unfortunately, 2 weeks before we were going to sign the contract, I got indicted. And they had me tied up with that for over 6 years, although I was exonerated on every charge, every allegation.
And to be honest with you, if you haven't read Billy's book, that's just a snippet of it. You have to read the book. It's some of
is that book now on your must reads
for Vegas?
Yeah, because I know Blood Aces was one of them.
Yeah.
So
that's a good question. It's not really necessarily a Vegas book. It's more of a sports betting book and an amazing story about sports betting.
Story.
And Billy's
his
insight.
personal story too is unbelievable.
There's some real nuggets of Vegas history in that book that I think is definitely it's on a must-read book.
Me personally, I think that the Steve Cyr episode was probably my favorite episode, and it was especially early on that I was obviously there live for, and that I've gone back and listened to a few times.
Steve Cyr was a character. His energy is ridiculous, and let's hear it.
This guy buys in for $6,000, which was amazing. And in about 40 minutes, he's up 50, 60 grand playing craps. And we could hear, because they had microphones hanging down. It wasn't like eye in the sky. We literally, guys had binoculars. And this guy came over, and he's like, "Oh no!" He goes, "BS." He goes, "You're going to Michael's tonight." That don't. This guy was staying at Caesar's Palace, and I go, "Wait, you guys, who's that? What does he do?" He goes, "Well, that's Kevin." I go, "What's Kevin's job?" Kevin's job is to get my 50 grand back. He's my casino host, and I go, "I want to do what he does." Michael Gahn called over to Caesar's. I started as a cash host 3 days after that last class. I called my mother and said, "I want to try being a casino host." Very upset, because they just paid for out-of-state tuition, and their kid was working at a sports book, making $50 a shift. And my mom, I used to tease her all about this line. She goes, "Well, I know you hate the cold, and the only other place you can even get a job is New Jersey. So you better like Nevada. You can only work in 2 states. Mom, the only place I can't work now is Utah and Hawaii." I got really lucky. I picked a career that 46 states adapted. Just like sports betting was only in one state.
And it's coming everywhere now.
Right? What about marijuana? It's coming everywhere. Okay, so I picked gaming, and it became everywhere. So that's when I started.
It makes total sense.
And I was a cash host, and I sold vitamins over the phone through college. And so I could see these other executives that sat on their ass, and I'm in the pit at Caesars hustling. And so I go to my boss, and I said, "Can I have a list of players that lost 5,000 or more and haven't been back in a year?" Because I knew.
This is in the 80s?
Yeah, 85, 86. And my boss said, "Well, why do you want that?" Because those players. I said, "Well, I'd like to call them." He goes, "You shouldn't call players. That's insulting." I said, "Well, could I come in on my off day and just call them?" It was so easy. It's like, "Hey, Jonathan, Steve Cyr. Hey, when was the last time you ate at Bacchanal? Where are you staying at, dude?" "Oh, Flamingo. Okay, look, next time you're in town, can I comp you dinner?" Because I could comp at Bacchanal. I could comp drinks on Cleopatra's Barge. I would just let me buy that. First quarter, I went like 170,000 just doing that.
So wait, what was done before that though? No one was called, like just waiting for players to come in?
I was the youngest by 30 years. I was 22. Everybody was 52. Okay, and they just sat in their office, all men, and each host had their own secretary. And so I met this guy named Johnny Oakes, and he was at the Desert Inn. And I said, "Hey, can I come over there and work with you?" I go, Caesars is going to be, 30 years from now, these relics are still going to be here. I'm never going to advance. And he goes, "Okay, let's try it." So I went over there, and I got fired after 4 months, but Johnny got fired too and went to the Hilton. And this man named Jimmy Newman, I went and talked to him and said, "Can I start a telemarketing room? I want grunts, 30 hours a week max. You don't have to pay them." And this would still be a great idea today. You pay them $10 an hour and you feed them, but no benefits. All we're going to do is call inactive players. I won like 700,000 my first quarter.
This is now that's at the Hilton.
That's a Hilton. So, and I lasted there a decade.
Yeah, you were there a while. But how would you talked about Michael Gahn, and we've talked about him extensively on this podcast, and his son.
His dad.
His dad, Jackie Gahn, who's inspired me down here, and just to see the way they're old school, great Vegas icons. How much has this town changed in the 30 years you've been here? You sort of touched on it earlier on with the comps.
Jonathan, look, my department, when I was at the Hilton, casino marketing, not exactly my department, but the casino was about 80% of the revenue. And we were a convention hotel, right? Now it's what? A third gaming, right? Jonathan, you told me a third hotel and conventions and a third nightlife and entertainment. So my department doesn't have the pull it used to have, okay? Because the pool makes as much.
I mean, that's more on the Strip. I think downtown and the local casinos is a different split, but on the Strip, for sure, you're right.
Yeah, and the pit boss was the hero. Now he's just another employee, I mean, we don't have the power. So, but there are so many choices now, like I said, in 48 states. Why come to Vegas? Because I can play blackjack in San Diego. They come here because of the adult nightlife, the entertainment, the restaurants. We're still 20 years ahead of everybody. And in my mind this year, I was going to take people to the Vegas Golden Knight games. I was going to take people to the Raider games. I mean, I need Celine Dion. I need strip clubs open. I need nightclubs open. I'm totally event driven in my little company.
So Steve was a pioneer in finding new ways to create lifelong guests at a hotel casino. It's something we try to do here at the Plaza, and this podcast is part of that effort. We're going to hear a little bit more from Steve about how he created some of those unforgettable experiences. How important is a host? do customers really stick with the host, or do they stick with the property? Not just you, as an industry.
Okay. Here's what I say when I train new hosts, and I just did this at a small casino in Washington. There was 14 of them, and they unfortunately hired me to kind of clean house. And I said, be honest. I said, if I fired all of you tomorrow and I took your list, how many players would we really lose? There's 2 casinos in 50 miles. You know, how many would we really lose? If a guy really likes the Plaza, he's a Plaza customer. There's no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm a little different just because I'm doing deal points for players, and I'm like a Jerry Maguire agent. I'm getting them that deal. And at a Larry Flint level, it's not about the room. He's got nice rooms everywhere. It's about the deal. Can I split aces 4 times? Can I double down after a split? If I lose $1 million, do I get a discount? Yes, 15% if you pay me in 60 days. You know, can I get $50,000 in free play when I first walk in the door? So I'm negotiating all that. But for the average player, if he likes Caesars, he's a Caesars guy. So I think, to answer your question, the property is more important, but you need hosts to grow your business or you're never going to grow. If you're not growing, you're dying. And as a rep, I only get paid for what? New or inactive. You pay me no benefits. I only get paid if they've never played there or haven't played there in a year. And so that's why hosts are so lazy. And I try to say, I sit down with host number 1 and say, here's a list of your players that haven't been in 10 months. I'm guessing I could get on the phone and book them all. Why do I keep you? So what happens is, Jonathan, is the host gets a little core of some players, and they get lazy, and they go to lunch every day with that same guy that would come here even if he was gone, and they have no incentive. So I like to build a bonus program only for new business,
That's clever. So why do hosts have to sign all these NDAs and non-competes, and what's up with all that?
Probably because of me. I'll take a little credit for that. First of all, I think it's funny when hosts get all butthurt and say, oh, Steve Cyr stole my player. Well, you know what? I'll give you my biggest player, Mr. S. I'll give you a cell number. Good luck. You know what I mean? I mean, if you really give a guy good service, it's about that relationship. And a player is going to go, I have players say, oh, man, my host is out of town, so I don't want him to know I was at your place. Some hosts get so butthurt that they make the player feel uncomfortable. Look, if you've got your ass kicked 4 times in a row at the Plaza, go try the Golden Nugget one night. I mean, give a guy a break. He needs to switch it up. So as a host, I'm like, I'll go with you. Let's go, because I can't gamble here. I can go gamble there with you. I mean, most big players, and when I say big, a guy that'll blow $10,000 on a weekend, he wants to go party with his host everywhere, but you can't get sloppy drunk where you work, or you shouldn't, So we go out. I go out with my players all the time, even when I was just a regular junior break-in host. I encourage that, because players know players. So if you're having a down week, what I do is say, I want you to write down 10 players, not maybe your 10 best, but 10 that you really know. They met your kid, or you've been out socially with them, whatever, and call and say, hey, I need some players. My boss is up my ass. I need some new players for this weekend. Players know players. I have players that will go on a cruise ship and play in a tournament, and they'll collect business cards for me, and then they mail them to me and stuff. That's been the best networking, is just from other gamblers. And so,
So it begs the question, Steve.
Okay.
What is the weirdest or most difficult thing you've done to attract a customer to you?
Well, I can't say weirdest, but I'd say like one of my biggest dice players.
And I'm sorry, because I know you probably get asked that question a bunch.
Yeah, but I've got a couple good stories. So one of my biggest dice players, I couldn't get him. He lived in Montana. I've been trying for a long time. And the MGM for his birthday sent him like a Mercedes-Benz, like what's he need? But obviously he loved dice, and he lived on a hot springs. So I asked my boss, his name was Jim Bradshaw at the time at the Hilton, if I could have $10,000 and make him a custom dice table. And I called Paulson, custom Eagle League dice table. His logo, Sleeping Child Hot Springs, was there. All the chips were custom for him. I rented a U-Haul, and I drove it to Missoula, Montana. And it was snowing out, and all of a sudden the road started steaming because he routed the hot springs 2 miles down to the highway. And I drive up, and this old guy's playing tennis out there without a shirt, and steam was coming up. And he goes, can I help you? He lost. I go, I'm Steve Cyr. I've been calling you for a year. I got a birthday present for you, and I'm really cold. Can I come in? We opened it up, put the dice table in. He had his guy drive the U-Haul back. Call Baron Hilton, send me the hawker. Got him. And that was the guy that my deal with him was, as long as you risk $1 million 1 month, the next month I'll take you anywhere around the world you want to go. And that was Fast Eddie in the book. We went for his 70th birthday. He wanted to go whitewater rafting in Costa Rica. I thought we were going to die. He wanted to go to the Super Bowl. We went to the Super Bowl. He wanted to go to the Kentucky Derby. He wanted to go swim with the Dolphins, Hilton Hawaiian Village. We did it. He wanted to go to Greece on a yacht one time. 10 days on a yacht. Started at Mykonos and did an island every day. So, I'm creative. And so another one of my players, I'd say the best take is so I had a player that loved to play pool. And I don't know if you know who Janet Lee is. Black Widow. She's a famous pool player, hot, good looking. So anyway, again, other places were giving him, $50,000 shopping sprees, this and that. So I sent him a pool cue. He lived in Beverly Hills, and when we put the two ends together, a 5 and a 6 came together. I had it custom made, like $6,000, really bounced and everything. And I said, can you meet me at the Beverly Hilton at 2 p.m. today? Came up there, went to the penthouse. I had a pool table. I go, you're playing her. And I told him to bring $10,000. They played 10 games, $1,000 a game. She won $10,000. So I got him to play Janet Lee one-on-one. One of my big players' sons wanted a tennis lesson. Tim Poster gets the brownie point. Who do you think gave him a tennis lesson? Andre Agassi. So you got to be creative. That kind of.
But how do you get these people to do such nice favors?
Well, I make them money. I make them money. I mean, I made, won millions for Tim Posters. So I said, hey, can you call Andre, who was a small owner of the Golden Nugget, and give this kid an hour tennis lesson? Now, that means more than a car from the MGM. It's just make it personal.
I just wanted to say that the energy that this guy brings to a podcast and everything he does in his life, he's become a good friend of mine. He does the bikini tug of war here in town. He does so much more for the city, but he is a legend in his own right in terms of changing the way casino hosts worked, thought about things, and I respect him greatly for what he's accomplished in his field. And I don't think we shared the story, but one of Steve's bosses, as he would call them, many years ago was the Golden Nugget. He worked at the Golden Nugget, and one of his bosses was Tim Poster. And Tim was also a guest. And definitely when I walk around and I meet people that say they've listened to this podcast, I would say oftentimes I get that their favorite episode was Mr. Poster.
When I look at Golden Nugget, and it's still to this day the best performer in downtown in terms of head count, in terms of many metrics, it's got the most rooms by far.
Yeah.
But Steve Wynn built it, and it was just built the best way.
He did.
And they flow the best, and they have the most logical layout. When you look at it over time, it has the best bones downtown. Its location is tough to beat as well. It just has so much going for it. Not to take anything away from what they do today there.
No,
the business they do. But being built by Steve Wynn, having that brand, having that database,
it's a huge advantage. One of the things that had always stuck out with me that I'll never forget, when we were studying their numbers, was I had reports on everything, and I just kept coming back to their slot machines won more money per machine per day than any major hotel in Las Vegas, anywhere.
Wow.
On the Strip, downtown, anywhere. And it was hard to imagine. Now, you could say that, that was simply a matter of, at the time, 1,900 rooms and only 1,200 machines. They probably should have had more machines. Well, yeah, but you could say the same for all the downtown joints. But the Nugget, highest win per unit per day.
What was it like owning a casino at 33, 34? Didn't you do a TV show as well?
Yeah, we did, which was sort of good and bad. The TV show,
what was the bad?
Well, tremendously stressful. It was incredibly
What was the show called?
It was called Casino.
Oh.
Yeah. It was, you can't imagine how good it was for business. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
Tom and I, for a time, turned into sort of quasi-celebrities. It became almost impossible to walk through the casino. I mean, if you had, I remember one lady, like a middle-aged woman, standing there with her husband in the middle of the casino at a blackjack table, telling her husband, you got to take a picture right here because this is where that guy was at this table. And just because that table was on TV, she had to have a picture of that table. And that really woke me up. Just because something's on TV, it has this magical draw.
Magical power.
And it was amazing.
I mean, you look the same thing up at the Palms.
Palms?
Palms
well, they were the first.
Effect.
Yeah, and that was actually a big reason why we did it, because the Maloufs, we talked to the Malouf family about it, George Malouf. He told me the same thing. They had that MTV show. Mm-hmm. I forget the name of it.
Real World.
Real World, that was it, yeah.
Thank you, Lisa.
And it was brilliant on his part to do that TV show. I don't know whose idea it was, but it was great. And he told me, look, you won't believe the people it draws. People will come here for no other reason, just because they saw it on.
It is a crazy phenomenon. Even to this day, I have a good friend of mine from England. He's on a TV show called $1 Million Listing, the real estate show.
Oh.
You can't walk around with him without people stopping him for a picture.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. It is. It was crazy.
Yeah. We should do a TV show here, Lisa.
Maybe.
Documentary on us.
Be a good one.
There are some good things that would be great for TV. That definitely.
I bet.
I'm sure. So what was it?
The downside of it was that, look, there were cameras on us literally every waking moment. From time I got up, time I went to bed. And they had to find drama. So you almost create the
That's
drama.
exactly what he said, my friend. So now they try to create drama. Now he doesn't want that anymore.
It's not, yeah.
The forced drama is too much. The natural drama is fine, but it's not enough.
Yeah. And it's one of the things I got in trouble for was because Tom and I used to both live at Park Towers. We both had apartments there. And so they would get us in the morning, talking about last night's numbers, just something to talk about. And they had the idea one morning of, okay, look, here's what we're going to do. You guys are going to race to work. And Tim, you're going to tell Tom that you can get to work before him and he's lazy and everything. And you're going to, he gets to work after you. And then he's going to say, no. And then you guys are going to bet on it. Who gets to work first. So then it will turn into a race. Okay, so I'm like, gosh, what the hell? So, okay, we go through this, this
race.
We go through this routine. Oh, Tom, you're so lazy. You get to work late. I'll get to work for you. We'll have a bet on it. So we bet $5,000. It was all bullshit. But, we all said, we agreed to bet $5,000. Well, they had helicopters. And they had our cars with cameras mounted on the cars.
Oh, God.
And then they showed us get into the car and then sort of peel away. And then that was it. Then I got out of that car and got into another car and drove to work. But it was all just for show. And then they had, all day they were filming with helicopters, showing our cars going down the freeway. Anyway, I don't know how many months later, when that scene got on TV, it showed my car going 90 miles an hour on the freeway. They showed a shot of my speedometer. But I wasn't even driving.
You weren't in the car, right?
I wasn't in the car.
Right.
Nevada Gaming Control Board called me in.
Oh, no.
Yeah. They said it was,
You're bringing the industry
promoting
to disrepute.
Unsafe driving. I shouldn't have done that. Why, it wasn't me.
That's a great one. It wasn't me.
It really wasn't. That was one time it wasn't.
Was that your first encounter with them?
No.
Can you share your other encounters?
Well, it depends where.
There was quite a few.
At the Nugget?
One time we had a casino promotion. At the time, the TV show Sopranos was real big.
Okay.
It was the number one show on TV. And so we had the idea of having the cast of the Sopranos come and do a meet and greet. We have a dinner. Some couple of the actors spoke, and it was just a sort of a promotion for the.
Sounds like a great promotion.
Yeah, it was. It was very popular. I mean, because that TV show was extremely, popular, and so we had to pay them a lot of money to appear, and one of the things we did for them was we gave them promo chips. Because I wanted them to gamble in the casino with our customers. So I had to give them the chips to do it, promo chips. And that after the event, everyone goes down to the casino, and it was just one of those things where, you never seen luck like this. These guys could not win a hand. They just couldn't. Every hand they lost. And, celebrities are famous for not ever wanting to pay for anything. And I knew that as soon as they ran out of the free chips, they weren't going to keep playing. And that would be bad. I wanted them to, sit there with our customers. So this was a mistake, but I got behind the blackjack table where the actors were sitting, and for a few hands, and I made them win. I just said, okay, come on.
That might be one of the best things I've heard.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
Gaming frowned upon that, I'm sure. Okay.
Yeah, and that happened at say midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning that night. And I think 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock the next morning, I got a call from my lawyer. They knew about it already.
Wow.
Yeah.
What'd you say? How'd you explain it?
It wasn't
I
me.
just told 'em.
It wasn't me.
So then I had to agree, okay, no more dealing blackjack.
No more. Had you dealt blackjack before?
No.
You ever go to dealer school?
I actually did.
Okay.
Yeah, Lorenzo and Fertitta and I did once. But not for blackjack. We went for craps.
Craps. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough.
Neither one of us ever dealt craps, but we
Right.
did go to
But at least you know
dealing
how to.
Yeah.
Roughly. Yeah, it's a tough game to deal.
Yeah.
Any what was like the business for you? Did it, in terms of like how was it for you to run that business? Did you enjoy it? You were there 2 years. How did it go? Did the business grow? Other than the TV show, of course.
yeah. Listen, it was very good for us. I mean, just we increased the numbers dramatically over what they had been. And again, I think it was because the Golden Nugget in the few years. Well, remember when Steve owned it, the Mirage opened in '89. So, his Las Vegas business migrated, much of it, to the Mirage in '89. And then later, especially when Bellagio opened in '98. So between '98 and then when MGM bought it in '01, then when we bought it in '03, it sort of became like a bastard child. They weren't really paying attention much to it anymore.
That's what happens.
That's what happened.
They get forgotten.
So there was a lot of low-hanging fruit.
You did create a monster there in those years in Steve Cyr. he I think that's where he became a monster, was with you.
Yeah.
At the Golden Nugget. He was on this podcast.
Was he?
And one of our most popular episodes we've ever done was Steve, because his stories were out of control.
A lot of
but
good
I
ones.
think you created that monster
Guilty.
at the Golden Nugget.
Guilty.
That's
Yeah.
where he learned everything.
He's a real aggressive guy, and I wanted the business, and he said he could get it. And, we were probably a little too aggressive. I came to learn later. But, listen, I can't deny that he did drive a tremendous amount of business.
And that is our last clip that we have for this episode. But don't worry, we have 2 more best of episodes coming that we'll detail out and will be released over the next few weeks. But it would be remiss of us if we didn't have a quick conversation about Lisa, as she had left the podcast, but was instrumental in the first 100 episodes that we did.
I like that you said she left the podcast. She actually left the Plaza. She left the Plaza and went to the Fontainebleau. By definition, she then left the podcast. Although maybe we can have her on as a guest but we've already established being on the podcast as a Fontainebleau employee is not a good idea, right, Rich? I mean, that's been established now.
We would have to converse about the Fontainebleau, and I don't think you want to do that right now. Why don't we start
She
this
did make a
again?
cameo.
No,
She did make a
it's all
quick
good.
cameo.
It's all good. But yes, Lisa was instrumental in starting this podcast. It was, not sure whose idea it was 4 years ago. Certainly something we needed to get us through the pandemic. And I think I touched on this, but the idea that we can do this and allow us to meet guests and fans that listen to this podcast and come downtown because of it is our reason for doing it. So, we miss Lisa. She was a great host to accompany you and I. But we've kept this going because of the fans, and great to see Lisa doing well where she is today. Still there today. And in closing, yes, we're going to do 2 more of these to talk about history, and one of the subjects will be more history. This one was more gaming related. The next one will be more history related, and then entertainment / food and beverage. But in real terms, speaking about, I'm very proud of this body of work of episodes, because if you are interested in gaming, if you're interested in Vegas, you go back and you hear, insight into the legends that made this town, from Steve Wynn, some of the best operators, some of the best gamblers. You're getting exposure to really great Vegas history. So if you haven't listened to these older episodes, now's your chance to go back and listen to them. And thank you, Gary, and thank you, Rich, for your wonderful support in making this happen.
Perfect.
And follow along for the giveaway, right, Gary? You got the info on that?
Yeah, so we got we're going to do a Vegas vacation. So the winner, which we'll post online, we'll have the winner at the end of the last best of episodes that we have. Winner will win a 2-night suite stay here at the hotel and a bunch more details. But follow us on.
But the thing I'm most excited about is the classic poker set with the Plaza poker chips.
Yes. And if schedules permit, they'll be able to come in and listen to one of our episodes, a live recording.
Oh, cool.
Kind of see everything behind the scenes.
Well, thanks for listening, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with the next Oscars dinner series. And this coming weekend is the premiere for On the Other Side of the Tracks, the documentary from our Emmett Gates episode.
Yeah,
so
that was the last episode that was just released.
a lot of exciting things happening.
To another 4 years.
Are you a fan of On the Corner of Main Street? You're listening, so we'll assume that's a yes. So share the love, rate, review, and tell a friend to subscribe. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram @PlazaPod, on Facebook, Plaza Podcast, and feel free to write to the man himself @Jonathan Jossel. We'll see you next time, right here on the corner of Main Street.